Either he's stupid or he thinks that we are stupid.
So Stephen A. Smith just brought on Dean Withers to break down Trump's Jesus photo controversy, and this conversation gets wild fast. Smith's been hammering Trump's mental state for months, and now we've got concrete examples of erratic behavior that even his Christian base can't defend. Let's break this down.
Trump says that the photo of him depicting himself as Jesus, that's fake news, that's not true. He was a doctor. Your response to that, first and foremost, your response to that, sir?
The guest is absolutely right. Trump's doctor explanation is insulting to anyone with eyes. The image showed glowing hands, heavenly light, angels, and robes. That's not medical imagery, that's classic Christ iconography. The lie is so obvious, it's almost pathological.
I didn't know that doctors healed people with magical light powers that come out of their hands as angels watch over from the sky while they're also dressed in white and red robes. Listen, either he's stupid or he thinks that we are stupid. This is the most common modern depiction of Jesus Christ.
This breakdown is devastating because it's so logical. Angels watching from the sky, magical light from hands, divine robes. These aren't medical symbols. The guest is methodically destroying Trump's excuse using basic visual literacy that any churchgoer would recognize instantly.
For everybody who grew up in a Christian family and would attend church on the regular, or maybe even had a family that would have depictions of Jesus in the home, that is the most common Jesus Christ look, quote unquote. So it's honestly insane that, either he's lying to us and covering up what he thought would be something his base would like, the depiction of him as God, but that quickly backfired, or he truly cannot decipher the difference between a modern day medical doctor and the modern day depiction of Jesus Christ.
That 70% Christian statistic he mentions later is crucial here. Trump didn't just offend Democrats, he blasphemed against the faith of his own base. The fact that he deleted the post proves he knew he'd crossed the line even his supporters won't cross.
Well, I mean, I think trying to explain the actions of the insane is very difficult to do, and quite frankly, often you can't. And I think that, by even asking that question, to a certain extent, we're sane washing what in all reality is just complete incoherent garbage.
The guest nails it. Trying to rationalize the irrational is futile. This isn't political strategy gone wrong. It's genuine chaos. When behavior becomes this disconnected from reality, analysis becomes impossible because there's no underlying logic to decode.
Now, my question to you would be is if you were interviewing somebody that maybe had a decent resume, and inside of that interview, they praised Allah, threatened to genocide 90 million people, attacked the Pope, and then depicted themselves as God. Is that somebody that you'd walk away with arguing that they'd be a good fit for the position, very sane, rational person? Or is that somebody that you'd probably shut the door on and label off as crazy?
This job interview analogy is brilliant because it strips away political tribalism. In any other context, praising foreign leaders, threatening genocide, attacking religious figures, then depicting yourself as God would end any career instantly. Why should the presidency be different?
No question about it. I totally agree with you there. But then my question to you would be, how do you anticipate the GOP, folks on the right, are going to react to all of this? Usually they try to explain away anything. But I don't know how they're going to try to pull that off when millions upon millions of Catholics in this country, no doubt, must have been offended by what he did, because evidenced by him removing the post earlier today.
The political calculation here is devastating for Republicans. Catholic voters are a massive swing demographic, and this crosses religious lines that transcend party loyalty. The post deletion shows even Trump's team recognized this was politically toxic immediately.
So I think we'll see a couple Republicans in Congress that hop on board with Trump's explanation. They will say that this is an innocent depiction of what looks to be a doctor. And then when the reporters ask them the very common sense question of, well, that doesn't make any sense, he had magical light glowing from his hands, they'll just kind of avoid those questions and move on with their day. But I think for the most part, I think that the representatives we have in Congress are at least smart enough to know that that explanation is not going to fly, and that this is a mess of a very large scale, considering the fact that 70% of Americans are Christian.
That 70% Christian figure makes this politically catastrophic. When you alienate 7 in 10 Americans over religious blasphemy, you've created an unforced error of historic proportions. Even loyal Republicans can't defend depicting yourself as Christ. It's theological third rail.
Yeah, I ask myself that same question on a daily basis. I think it's just incoherent. Incoherent senility. That's probably not a good word. Let me go ahead and replace that with another one. I think that it's incoherent garbage.
The shift from senile to incoherent garbage shows even Trump critics are struggling to find adequate terminology. This isn't normal political discourse anymore. It's trying to analyze behavior that exists outside rational political frameworks entirely.
And my argument for that would be is that during his first term, we never saw this when he was a little bit younger and maybe a little bit more coherent, with a little bit more spectacular insofar as using his brain to think critically. I mean, I still wasn't a fan of him, but, we definitely didn't see him depicting himself as Jesus Christ, threatening genocide of 90 million people, so on and so forth. So frankly, man, I just think he's getting old. I think that there are leading medical health professionals that are arguing that there is an increasing plausibility of dementia.
This comparison between Trump's first term and now is crucial. The escalation in erratic behaviors suggests genuine cognitive decline. Medical professionals calling for dementia testing aren't partisan attacks. They're clinical observations of deteriorating judgment and reality testing.
And now we see representatives such as Jamie Raskin formally requesting the private doctor of Donald Trump to give him a cognitive exam and then to bring the results back to Congress. And I think that there's something to that. I think he's losing his mind.
Jamie Raskin formally requesting cognitive testing elevates this from political theater to genuine constitutional concern. When Congress starts demanding neurological evaluations, we're in uncharted territory that goes beyond normal political opposition.
I'm of the mindset that I've listened to people call for the 25th Amendment to be invoked when it comes to him, that's an exercise in futility. I've gotten on the Democratic Party for doing that because I'm tired of wasted energy, Dean. And what I mean by that is let's focus on something that you can actually get done. Because the reality is that after going through what you went through, in terms of the felony convictions and everything like that, the man still returned to office. And in order to get the 25th Amendment invoked, the vice president has to sign off, half of the GOP's got to sign off, et cetera, 2/3 of Congress, all of this other stuff. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. Let's not waste the energy on that. Do you agree with that? Or are you in opposition to that mode of thinking and think that the 25th Amendment should be invoked where he's concerned?
This is smart political realism. The 25th Amendment requires GOP cooperation that will never come. So focusing energy there is strategic malpractice. Better to channel resources into winnable 2026 midterm races that can actually constrain presidential power.
Well, I mean, of course, I think the 25th Amendment should be invoked, but ultimately I agree with you in the sense that it's not going to happen. And for that reason, I do think it is important for the Democratic Party to keep their priorities straight. We have a much better shot at impeachment through Congress if we could win the House and maybe even win the Senate come midterms. And I think that's what I'd really like to see done. I do not believe that J.D. Vance would ever stray away from the narrative set forth by Trump. Because quite frankly, I think that J.D. Vance is a lapdog. He's a follower. He's willing to do what will ever get him the most power. And right now, that's be a servant to Trump. I mean, just look at him before Trump was president, saying that Trump is literally America's Hitler, to now saying that Trump is literally the best president of history. So hopefully what we'll be able to do is impeach him through Congress after the Democrats win midterms with blue wave across the country. And then instead of J.D. Vance being a follower and a lapdog of Trump, hopefully he'll be a follower and a lapdog to the more reasonable demands of Congress, which is a slightly better reality than the one that we live in today.
The Vance analysis is devastating. From calling Trump America's Hitler to best president in history shows complete moral flexibility. This isn't political evolution. It's opportunistic shape-shifting that proves he'd enable anything for power.
Well, what should that course of action be? Because for me personally, I think the mistake is focusing too much on Trump. And here's what I mean by that, Dean. He can't do a damn thing without their support. He can talk about what he wants to talk about. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't mean that in a literal sense. I know he's got the power to pen executive orders. We know what trouble he's utilized that mechanism to invoke and all of that. I got that part. But what I'm saying is that if you've got members in both the House and the Senate on the GOP side who stand up, show a spine, and say, listen, this is wrong. We're not vibing with this. We're not going to do this. There's little that he can do to further damage this country. So my mentality is that I think it's a mistake to be so focused on every little thing that he does. I'm not talking about this latest one because obviously you're Catholic, you're Christian, you should be offended by what he's done. I know I am. But I'm saying that overall, the distractionary measures he tries to implement and invoke, the things that he tries to do to get our eyes off the ball, campaigning on the Epstein files and then going away from that, campaigning on no new wars and then engaging in yet another one, doing the kind of things that he's been doing. I think that if others within that party, that side of the aisle, stand up to him, that's the mode of attack that Democrats should be exercising rather than focus on spewing, derogatory rhetoric towards in his direction.
The Iran escalation perfectly illustrates broken campaign promises. Trump ran on no new wars, then immediately engaged in Middle East conflict. This pattern of saying one thing, doing another, is exactly why focusing on GOP enablers makes more strategic sense.
Well, what I say to that is, how did that go with the release of the Epstein files? Because that's exactly what the Democrats tried to do for months, to get as many members of the GOP on board with the discharge petition to force a vote for the release of Epstein, for the release of the Epstein files. And after months of effort and labor and work invested into trying to get the GOP to divert away from Trump, we got what, 4 of them? Thomas Massie, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and MTG. And then, I mean, seemingly they all got burned. MTG was got kicked out of politics as a whole. Thomas Massie gets a paragraph written about how terrible he is about once a month. Nancy Mace, I don't know about her, but Lauren Boebert, she got her clean water bill killed in Colorado. So, I mean, if it was already so unsuccessful the first time around when it was about victims of rape and survivors of pedophilia, and then the 4 GOP members that we were able to convince got burned, I don't think it'd be too successful a second time around now that they know the consequences.
The Epstein files example proves GOP loyalty to Trump is absolute. When only 4 Republicans would support releasing files about child abuse and they got punished for it, expecting them to break ranks on anything else is political fantasy.
But ultimately, because it hasn't worked before, we need to be realistic. And we need to recognize that we live in a duopoly, a 2-party system, where one of the 2 parties is serving to every call and demand of Trump, and the other one is at least saying they want to stop him. So let's vote for the party that says they want to stop him, and let's uplift candidates who swear an oath to common decency, the Constitution, and paths of actions to prevent him from continuing on this path of madness, which would ultimately be voting for smart Democrats in the midterms.
This duopoly analysis cuts through wishful thinking. One party enables Trump completely, the other at least claims opposition. In a 2-party system, the choice is binary. Hoping for Republican courage after years of evidence is strategic delusion.
I think he's going to lose a lot of support. And I rarely say that because this is the man who is able to win an election after J6, after the civil court that concluded he raped E. Jean Carroll, after the 34 felonies. But I'm saying that now, and that's because of what I do when I go live every day. I talk to people who support Trump, and I try to change their minds. Last night, after that photo was posted on Truth Social, I think we had 3 or 4 Trump supporters back to back who joined the live, told me they supported Trump. I showed them the picture. I explained why it's so blasphemous to their faith, because every single one of them was Christian. And then they left saying, I can't support this. And I think that's a trend we see across the nation. And ultimately, this is just going to be another blow against his approval rating, a loss for Trump, but a win for humanity.
This is remarkable. Actual Trump supporters changing their minds over religious blasphemy when they stayed loyal through felonies, sexual assault, and January 6th. The Jesus photo crossed a line that even tribal loyalty couldn't protect. That's unprecedented political miscalculation.
That's what I've been talking about. Dean Withers, thank you. Thank you. That's all I wanted to hear from somebody on the left. That's what I wanted to hear. It's like, no, can we actually do stuff that's going to have an impact instead of whistling into the wind about stuff that's not going to get him out of office? I mean, you get the Democrats back into the House, control of the House or the Senate or both, then guess what? You've muted him significantly. That's really what we're after, is it not? That's all I've been saying.
Amen.
This celebration of practical politics over constitutional fantasies shows real strategic wisdom. Focus on achievable electoral goals rather than procedural long shots. Win the House and Senate in 2026. Constrain presidential power through normal democratic processes.